Here tonight and plead with you. Believe in yourself and believe that you're somebody. And as I said to a group last night, nobody else can do this for us. No document can do this for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do this for us. No Kennysonian or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do this for us. If the Negro is to be free, he must move down into the inner resources of his own soul and sign with a pen and ink of self-assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation. Don't let anybody take your manhood. Be proud of our heritage. As somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. There's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure, high, and clean. But I want to get the language right tonight. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
Good night, Guyana, and welcome to another episode of Reparations Now. I'm Esther Gittin, sitting in for our moderator, Brother Jonathan Adams, and you must know that this program comes to you under the auspices of the Ministry of Presidency, Department of Social Cohesion. In studio with me here this evening is Brother Eric Phillips, the chairman of the Guyana Reparations Committee. In our last two programs, we discussed our book, The Guyana Reparations Story. We discussed books 1 and 2. On this episode of our program, we're discussing book 3, which speaks about the African Guyanese Holocaust. During our program, we will be having questions running at the bottom of your screen. In the last 15 minutes of the program, we'll open our lines for 15 minutes where you'll be able to ask questions, where you'll be able to answer the questions that are running at the bottom of the screen and get an opportunity to win a copy of the Guyana Reparations Story. In September of 2001, in South Africa, a declaration was made called the Durban Declaration. I'd love to read some about that out of our book. It begins, slavery and the slave trade were crimes against humanity. We acknowledge that slavery and the slave trade, including the transatlantic slave trade, were appalling tragedies in the history of humanity, not only because of their abhorrent barbarism, but also in terms of their magnitude, organized nature, and especially their negation of the essence of the victims. And further acknowledge that slavery and the slave trade are a crime against humanity and should always have been so, especially the transatlantic slave trade, and are among the major sources and manifestations of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, and that Africans and people of African descent, Asians and people of Asian descent, and indigenous peoples were victims of these acts and continue to be victims of their consequences. Brother Eric, could you give us your definition of the African Holocaust or the Durban Declaration?
Well, the Durban Declaration essentially said that slavery was a criminal enterprise and that those who carried out that enterprise should be held accountable. We use the word slavery, enslavement, but we miss the barbarity of it.
Sure.
So what I'd like to do is to read from the ICC, International Criminal Court at The Hague, their definition of what a crime against humanity is, so that our audience could get a sense. So for the purpose of this statute, crime against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack: murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation or forcible transfer of population, imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law, torture, rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, enforced sterilization, persecution against any identifiable group or collectively on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender, or any other area, enforced disappearance of persons, the crime of apartheid, other immune acts of similar character intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to the body or to the mental or physical health. So when we speak about slavery, when we speak about the African Holocaust, it is soft in that people have become immune to the real meaning of what slavery was. It was the greatest crime on earth. And in Guyana in particular, it was just as brutal as it was in other parts of the Caribbean. So I'm glad we're looking at book 3, which is the African Holocaust in Guyana. And I think in order to give a broader context, we need to give more meaning to the word Holocaust.
True.
We know about the Jewish Holocaust.
True.
And the claim there is that 6 million Jews were exterminated, were destroyed, were murdered. To put it really in context in terms of the African Holocaust, in 1650, the year 1650, Europe and Africa had 100 million people. By 1850, 200 years later, Europe had grown to 265 million people, whereas the population of Africa shrunk to 95. So within 200 years, 170 million Africans were wiped off of the earth. And that was because when they went to get captured Africans, they killed, they plundered, women were destroyed, they couldn't reproduce.
Yeah.
Older women, older men were left to die.
Yes.
So the Holocaust is, in terms of African Holocaust, is an exponential magnitude compared to the Jewish Holocaust. Yet we don't seem to appreciate it, we don't seem to acknowledge it. And this resulted, of course, in 1881 with a depopulated Africa that 22 European and American countries were able to go to and divide Africa at the Berlin Conference. So the Holocaust has had tremendous impact on Africa. It destroyed populations, it destroyed economic growth, it destroyed generational wealth.
Sure.
So this is perhaps the most important part of our book.
True. So, which it clearly outlines that the transatlantic slave trade was declared the greatest crime against humanity. So, Brother Eric, tell us, something must have triggered this Holocaust, this slave trade. Tell us, to your knowledge, what triggered this Holocaust.
Yeah. I'd like to go to the book, and I'm hoping that more people in the Guyanese public obtain this book. We brought in 10,000 copies. And as much as we become Christians and Catholics and other religions, the triggers for slavery in terms of the Atlantic slave trade, it was triggered by the Catholic Church. And people will say, well, that can't be true. Well, there were 3 papal bulls, and this was like laws, laid down by the Catholic Church. The first is Dum Diversus, which was in the 18th of June, 1452. Of course, we know when Columbus came here, shortly after. Then there was a second papal bull called Romanus Pontifex, and then a third in 1493 called Inter Caetera. Pope Nicholas V issued these papal bulls to King Alfonso V. And in essence, this became law. What it stated indirectly is that if you are not Christian, then you could be enslaved. And all of your properties could be seized because you are not Christian. The third papal bull, of course, helped to clarify domination among European nations of who they were conquering by stating that no one country has dominion over the other. So that's why Brazil is today Portuguese and the rest of it is Latin, it's in Spanish. So the papal bulls triggered this. The papal bulls came out with the Catholic Church. And as much as Christians may not want to accept that, this is the historical fact.
Okay, now we're on our book, and I would like to call on our technician to show us some of our images, so you could tell us more, because the images will bring our audience more closer to understanding what we're really talking about.
Certainly. So here we are being brought from Africa like sardines. Those are layers of people who are stacked in the bottom of a ship. They can't move. Sometimes they're there for 3 to 6 months. This is the type of suffering that we had, and this is why the death rate was so high, almost 33% across the transatlantic. So that's what that image is about.
Next.
The next image shows you our friend, if you would want to call him that, that is King Alfonso. No, Pope Nicholas V. Pope
yes,
Nicholas V.
That's Pope Nicholas.
Yeah, he was the Pope who issued the first 2 papal bulls to our friend King Alfonso V. And this resulted in Columbus and other Europeans believing they had the right to enslave anyone who was not a Christian.
Next. Yes.
And that's the king. As you could see, these were the powerful people of the time, the church and the, how can I put it?
State.
The state.
Yes.
Now we have separation of church and state.
Yes.
That's just one of the horrible instruments used to destroy us, to punish us. As you know, punishments were severe. They would screw that around your neck. They would put your fingers there and screw it.
Yes.
It was just harsh.
And you could see the fingers.
Yeah, you could see
there.
right there.
Yes.
So torture was evident, it was daily, it was relentless. This is just one of course, you had the whip. We have an example, a copy of one that's made out of steel.
Next. Yes.
Yeah, this is a traditional picture showing us being whipped. Of course, ultimately, this transferred into lynchings. They love to put us on trees and whip us naked skin so as to let us know who's the boss and to prevent us from being rebellious. Again, other punishments. This was put around your neck. Of course, it's made out of heavy iron. It had spikes on it, so you can understand what would happen to you, the imprints that would left around your neck, or if you tried to escape, how that would hinder you.
True. All right. Well, I think our book is being a bit mild on the actual kind of punishment they administer to us, because if you keep researching, you would find it. And we talk a lot about the things they did to our women, but we tend to not want to talk about the things that they did to our men.
Yeah.
Because even sodomizing was one of the main ways, and they did it in front of your family or in front of the whole, especially our strong men who would be leaders and be the rebellious type. And these are the kind of things we don't want to talk about. And
Well,
so,
yes, as you look at the 1823 rebellion, they cut our heads off,
yes.
put them on stakes. If a woman was pregnant, they would gut her in front of other women. They would castrate the men. So these are memories we don't want to think about, but this is how cruel it was, and this is why it's a crime against humanity. And I read what the ICC said in terms of torture and rape and all these other things.
Yes, so Brother Eric, tell us about the 1823 Holocaust.
Well, the 1823 was a mini Holocaust in terms of the broader Holocaust, but we rebelled. We had about 10,000 enslaved Africans from 55 plantations. They were being mistreated badly. There was some false information being shared. And so they rebelled with cutlasses. And of course, they were gunned down. They were captured. They were brought to Parade Ground, which is Independence Square, where we have Burnham Court. They were decapitated and they were put on stakes. And those stakes were put all along the coast to let people know that they weren't tolerated. The judgments were summary. And of course, Kwamina was shot in the back by one of our indigenous members who was paid to hunt us down.
Yes, well, we're told, or research has shown that 4,073 of us died. Is that correct?
In that particular 1823, a lot of us died, but 200 were decapitated.
Okay, all right.
They should be martyrs, and Parade Ground should be given over to the African Reparations Committee so that we can make it a shrine. It's sacred ground.
It is.
I know there's a promenade garden there, but I'm hoping that next year we can petition the government to make it Emancipation Park, where we can put our heroes, similar to what Jamaica has done. Jamaica has an Emancipation Park with all of its heroes, because this has to be living history, and if you can't remember what happened in the past, it'll happen again.
True. And before I actually joined the Guyana Reparations Committee, I never knew that the Promenade Gardens is part of Independence Park or Parade Ground.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah, the Promenade Gardens was part of the original murdering fields.
Okay.
Of course, now there's a garden there with statues, and it's being treated well. But the whole area is sacred ground. Nowhere else in the world would a sacred ground like that be used the way it is. It should become a permanent memory, and it should be revered and protected properly.
True, and it should be emanating what actually happened there. The history of that place is what should be displayed there, I think.
Absolutely.
I trust that our president is listening and looking to our program and does something about that.
Well, we need to do it as Martin Luther King said in the opening presentation, no paper no document, no words can give us back our dignity. We have to, within our soul, to want our dignity, and we have to act.
True.
What I find in Guyana is that we're too cowardly.
True.
We're afraid to be African. We're afraid to stand up for our rights, but we love to stand up for everybody else's rights. And currently, I know that with oil here, I speak to our young people. They're nervous. They're afraid. They see no future. They look at what's going on in the country. Hey, we went through slavery, and this is nothing.
I know. So, I know from then to now, we as African Guyanese, we've achieved a lot. I would love to call on you too.
Yeah, we often don't celebrate our achievements. We look at a cup of a glass that is half full with water, and we say it's half empty. But we have done tremendous things. First of all, we built this country.
Sure, we did.
We cleared, according to the Venn Commission, 15,000 square miles, or 18% of Guyana. We built all the sugar estates. We built the seawall. We were the creators of the economy in 1838.
True.
Around emancipation. We were the 100% contributors to the GDP of this country. We've done a lot of things, and we need to reaffirm that we've come from a legacy of greatness. People who built the pyramids, people who were doing mathematics 35,000 years ago. We were the first people on earth. So we were the first farmers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, teachers. We don't seem to acknowledge this. We seem to want to be in despair. And I can understand that if your self-esteem has been beaten out of you. But our ancestors fought and fought and fought, and that's why we're here. So we need to acknowledge that black is beautiful. It takes nothing away from other races. Many people like to believe that because we affirm our beauty, that we're taking away from others. Hey, you are beautiful too.
We are too.
But we are beautiful, and black is beautiful, and we need to acknowledge that and believe that and act with confidence that we are.
And Africa is the cradle of civilization. Everything began there. Everyone came from one family in Africa.
Right.
So, tell us about some of the legacies. Let's talk about some of the legacies of enslavement.
Yeah, and in particular, the Holocaust in Guyana. Our ancestors came here around 1621, and we were enslaved until 1838, over 200 years. During that period of time, we lost our culture, we lost our names, we lost our religions, we lost our foods, we lost wealth creation, we lost our lands in Africa, and we were given false names, which we still have today. We were given a religion that enslaved us, because religion and slavery were two sides of the coin.
True.
You know, the software and the hardware.
True.
And our dignity was taken away. So if you look at the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, and this is the 70th anniversary, when you look at all the articles in that declaration, you will see that we lost every single human right during enslavement. As a matter of fact, it was called chattel slavery.
True.
Because we were deemed inhuman and not human.
True.
And we were treated as such. So we couldn't own anything. We were just chattel. So out of that, we have lasting legacies. We've lost contact with our identity.
True.
We've lost contact with our
motherland.
We've lost contact with, who we are in essence. Our DNA is the same, I lived in South Africa and Africa for 7.5 years, and I recognize what we lost. You know, so our education has miseducated us, our education system. Many of us believe we're inferior. That's what the legacy of enslavement. I don't know why anyone would want to feel inferior. A reporter once asked me, aren't you, why are you so proud of being black? You know, as if being black is not something to be proud of.
about.
So I said to her, you know, why wouldn't I want to be of the same ilk as Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King? And you can go on and on throughout history of all the great people in the African community. Why would I not want to be like them and be part of them, because they are who I am? So the media itself tries to give us images of inferiority by the types of outrageous questions they ask
And I
us.
wouldn't even blame the media. It's the type of education that we get, because, for instance, the history you will get starts with slavery, and so
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
read about that, like, you don't even want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then too, when you read the Bible, because I can tell you, when I started to acknowledge myself as Rastafari, the first thing they tell you to do is read the Bible. You read it a chapter a day, you read from page 1 to the back. And when I finished reading that book, I was feeling so oppressed. I was feeling so lost that I was unsatisfied. I said, no, this can't be enough. This can't be all, because somehow I couldn't find, I was dissatisfied with myself as a woman from the book. I only got to be firm about myself, proud about myself, and strong and confident as a black woman when I began to read the history of Ethiopia, because I started to learn about Haile Selassie, and there is no way you could learn about Haile Selassie and not learn about Ethiopia and Africa as a continent. And so part of what the people are feeling and how they are operating, not wanting to acknowledge themselves and not being proud of black, is because of the miseducation.
Yeah.
And if you don't seek to, if you bury your head in the Bible and the history, there are no history that is being taught in schools, that is how it will be. If you don't check to see your own history, African history, you won't have that self-pride.
And it's so contradictory, you know. You read the Bible, and I was a born-again Christian for 7 years. And the Bible makes the statement that we're born in the image of God.
Yes,
And Africans were the first people on earth.
true.
So yet all these images you see are not of an African God. You see a white God. And so part of what we see every day is that almost every other ethnic group prays to a God that looks like them.
Yes.
And we are praying to everybody else's God. And that's part of the mental slavery that Bob
True.
Marley was speaking about. But, you know, the internet is here, and we're starting to understand history better.
True.
For example, until we wrote this book, we didn't know a lot of things about Guyana history.
True.
That's part of the miseducation of Guyanese. Every Guyanese should read this book,
True.
because this book is not about African history. It's about Guyanese history, of which we are a central part. Without us, there's no Guyana. I don't know why people don't understand that. We built Guyana.
Of course we did.
And part of what happened in the Holocaust is that over 473,000 of us sacrificed our lives and died building Guyana,
True.
whilst others who came after us,
They inherited.
they inherited that, but they didn't have to come here as slaves.
No, they did.
So emancipation, which we fought for, made that all Guyanese who came after us came as free men and were treated as human beings in that they were paid for the work they did. We slaved here for 200 years and got nothing out of it. And it is amazing that all these religions speak about justice, and our legal system speaks about justice. But when we say to repair us, to give us the lands that we should be getting as reparatory justice, they get upset.
I know.
So they're living a lie with their own Bibles and with their own justice systems because it's only justice for them.
True.
What about justice for us? We're human beings.
Of course
We
are.
cleared this country, we built this country, we died for this country in thousands, hundreds of thousands.
True.
And therefore, like the indigenous people who got 13.8% again for just being here, we indigenized this land. We turned this land into a nation. We irrigated this land.
True.
We made this land productive
True.
so that everyone else could now benefit from the fruits and vegetables, the oil, the
Everything.
minerals, the golds, and yet we're at the bottom of the economic ladder because we've not been given economic justice
True.
or any justice.
No justice, no support at all. All of this just reaffirms that African Guyanese history needs to be rewritten. Because once African Guyanese history is rewritten, our contributions cannot be hidden or overlooked.
Yeah, I've always stated that the president needs to put together a group of eminent historians, led by Clemcy Turin, who is a professor emeritus, to write Guyanese history and not to leave out things. For example, that 3 of the 9 indigenous groups came here 100 to 200 years after us.
True.
They did.
They did.
That's hidden. There were black Caribs. There were so many of us who were murdered and killed
True.
to build Guyana. We need to really have one narrative of our
True.
history,
True.
not an Indian narrative or an African
Because
narrative.
we're one people, one
Right.
nation, one destiny.
And-
so
and
we
to-
should have one narrative of the history
Right.
of Guyana. So give us some insight into what we're looking forward to in the future. I know we made presentations to the Land Commission of Inquiry. They responded to us by requesting that we put together a document of where we think we want land, how we would manage it, who would be the beneficiaries, and so forth. So tell us a bit about that.
We've hired a lawyer and a historian and a researcher, and they are working on the Ancestral Rights Bill, which is parallel to in Amerindian Act of 2006. That group is also working on a perpetual trust, which means that whatever reparations is received is communal property. It's not myself or yourself or members of the reparations committee. It belongs to the community
True.
and will be managed as such. So we will have 15 trustees who will be selected out of villages. We'll have a professional set of trustees who will work to make sure that individuals or descendants of Africans in Guyana will benefit. More importantly, though, we're looking at some other things. You can't be a capitalist without capital.
No, you can't.
So we're looking at how to raise capital, how to create a bank. That's ongoing. We also, as the Guyana Reparations Committee, for 2019, we've committed to creating a Council of African Leaders across Guyana. We're too fragmented.
We are.
We're too selfish.
We are.
Without unity, we'll get nowhere.
Nowhere.
It's our DNA. That's how the villages were bought. So we'll go across the breadth of Guyana and speak to people, and hopefully by next August, we will have what we call an Indaba, where all these leaders will come to Georgetown for a week, and we will speak about the issues facing us. Education, we have to re-educate ourselves. What's going on in oil, our youth, how we deal with our elderly, those types of things. Because right now, we're fighting little fights. On a daily basis, I get calls for people across Guyana who are fighting land issues. Our land is being taken away from us in so many different illegal ways by lawyers and
True.
judges.
True.
We have some of our prominent business families under stress because the bankers loan them money knowing that the enterprise would fail. All of that is so scandalous. So those are the things we're working on. We're working on understanding how to create generational wealth. We're working on how to re-educate ourselves.
True.
We're working on that leadership council, which hopefully we'll be able to bring together so that we don't have 5 groups in Victoria fighting each other, but we have a group from Victoria that's representative of the collective needs of Victoria. So those are some of the things we're working on.
All right. While we talk some more, I would like to ask our technician to post the number for our telephone so that our calls could come in. Could post the number on the screen, and we'll take calls while you tell us a bit more about how you think the village council will work.
Yeah. You know, politics is a complicated thing. The reason we want to create this council of leaders is to worry about our collective needs. Politicians in Guyana have to serve all peoples. And in serving all peoples, they're making trade-offs. Some trade off the fact that they want to get votes from other communities and ignore us.
True.
Without recognizing that we're their strength.
True.
So the only way we could really benefit as a collective is for us to have a single voice and a voice of consensus. Oil is here. What is the role we're playing in oil? Because we don't have generational wealth, we don't own banks, we don't own technology. The procurement system is anti-African Guyanese participation. So these are the types of issues we're discussing. We have to find solutions. I know we'll find solutions.
Looks like we're having a call. Let me see. Just blinking.
Yeah. So we're working on those types of issues. And of course, we're looking to get this book into the hands of many more Guyanese.
Yes. Yes. We were supposed to be taking calls. I would like to tell our viewers they're free to call now. Our number is supposed to be posted on the screen. You could call and answer some of the questions that were running at the bottom of your screen, so you can win your copy of the Guyana Reparations story. And at the same time, we'd like to see how our program is impacting our audience.
Yeah.
We need to know if people are absorbing the information that is being disseminated here.
While we wait for calls, I know that next year the CARICOM Reparations Commission is expecting a visit from some African chiefs who are part of the reparations movement. They're now mobilizing in Africa to support us.
Okay.
Also in the news, the University of Glasgow has agreed to put aside £200 million to educate people in the Caribbean. They're working with Sir Hilary Beckles, who is the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. We plan to have a conference with Glasgow sometime next year. So there are many little things happening in the world of reparations.
Well, on our last program, we had 5 winners. 2 of them came to pick up their copies of Guyana Reparations Story at the African Museum. That was Quincy Smart and Queen Mother Aisha. We also have Miss Shonette Hermenstein to come and pick up our copy. Mr. Lennox Merchant and Patricia Tyndall. Those are 3 other winners who won copies of the book, but they didn't come to pick up their copies. And these can be picked up at the Museum of African Heritage in Burima Avenue, where we have our weekly meetings every Thursday beginning at 5:30 p.m., except on national holidays.
I'd also like to welcome back Sister Penda.
Yes.
As you know, she was ill.
Very.
She went to the UK. She was there for 5.5 months. They were recommending a particular type of treatment, which was chemical. She and her husband said no, and they used natural remedies, mainly diet.
Yes.
And today she is healthy. So
Yes, and she's
we
well.
welcome her back,
Yes.
and we would like our people to know that you should grow what you eat
And
and
eat what you grow. Yes.
because whatever eating is your medicine.
And right to mention in our book here, we spoke about him in chapter 2, I think. Imhotep,
Yeah, the
father of medicine. He has a famous speech that says, "Let your food be your medicine, and your medicine be your food." And we know our founder leader said, "If you didn't plant it, don't eat it.
Is it feed?
Feed yourself."
Yeah. Imhotep is an interesting person. As you know, he's the father of medicine.
Yes.
He was born 2,000 years before the new father of medicine, which the West created. He was doing surgery in 92 different diseases before all these modern
This is
equipment.
though we're having a call, I hope.
Are we connecting with?
I think so.
Yeah, so Imhotep is mentioned in this book so that our readers can get a sense as to the great civilizations that existed. We have another book called Know Thyself, and that book, of course, we only have about 100 copies left, and that should be a good Christmas gift for young people.
Yes.
So book 3 we've covered today, African Guyanese Holocaust, which shows that over 473,000 Guyanese of African descent died to build Guyana, and we're seeking justice in terms of lands and other benefits so that we can have an inclusive society.
Yes, most certainly.
You know, we're pushing this green economy as the way of the future, and indeed it should be. And it's underpinned by Agenda 2030, which has 17 Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
And it's all about protecting the environment, inclusive growth, etc. So for us to have a cohesive society, Amerindians should be given what they deserve.
True.
We should be given what our deserves.
True.
Other groups should be given what they deserve in a just way.
True.
And if that happens, we will have a fundamental basis for moving together as one people, one nation, and one destiny.
True. And green economy is most important because, for instance, you can't have a green economy the way things are because things, we discovered that 15 things were deliberately done to keep the African Guyanese in this economic position. So if we talking green and we keep distributing everything equally, there is no way that we will get equity. You know, everybody likes to talk about equality, but nobody wants to talk about equity, because if things were done to keep us deliberately, to keep us in this position, then things have to be done deliberately to cause equity.
Yeah, page 10 and 11 of book 4 describes those 15 actions, which were all done by the state. Originally the Dutch state, then the British state, and then after independence. And we saw what happened when an extreme amount of wealth was transferred from the state to an ethnic group under one of the previous governments.
True, and also even when they came here first, when the indentured laborers came here, they were given lands, they were given free place to live, they were given ration at the end of every week, and at the end of emancipation we got nothing. We were turned out, we didn't get any land, we didn't get any no economic base, we had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, I'm glad you raised that, because I'm always amazed every year on November 11th, our Armistice Day, the 11th day of the 11th month, the 11th hour, how overwhelming it is in Guyana to see all these puppies.
True.
These red puppies. I see a lot of school children, some with 15 to 20 puppies. I went to Canada during that period, I saw puppies. I went to the States, I saw puppies. But we don't have any symbol for the African Holocaust. So I'm working with Dr. Eddie Grant to create such a symbol so that we acknowledge the much larger Holocaust, not the Jewish Holocaust, which was 6 million, but the African Holocaust, which seems to be forgotten. And until everyone recognizes that this Holocaust was the greatest crime against humanity, there won't be the empathy in other groups to give us justice.
True. Because there won't be there isn't, and there won't be the empathy because they themselves don't understand what we went through. So I think if they know more about what we actually went through, they would empathize more with us.
Yeah, and it comes back to our history. We need one narrative. We need to fairly describe all the contributions of all the groups because all the groups have contributed. But in our current history books, our contribution is missing.
We were slaves. That's all there is. And that's why the youths aren't gravitating so easily to the African culture too, because it thinks it's kind of depressing and they don't want to be with that part of themselves.
Well, it's self-hate. It's a sickness. If you can't love yourself, you're going to be sick.
True.
You can't hide from your identity. I keep saying to people, when you leave Guyana and you are on a plane and you land in the States, they don't say, here, that's a Guyanese. They look at you and they see an African,
True.
or an Indian, or a Chinese.
True.
So we keep confusing ourselves about we're all Guyanese. Yes, we are, but we are also other things.
True.
And the world sees you not as Guyanese. Well, now that we have oil, they may want to see us as Guyanese.
They might.
But when you leave Guyana, you leave these shores, people have no way of knowing where you're from, which country.
True.
So it's not your geography, it's your identity. And that's clearly you're African. So if you are ashamed of being African, if you're ashamed of your color, if you're ashamed of your food or your nose or whatever it is, you'll really have a difficult time in this life because you'll be schizophrenic.
True. And our DNA, we still have the DNA of our ancestors. It hasn't changed.
Everybody has their own.
Everywhere we go, I could see somebody looking like you that I might take for your brother. You could find everywhere we go. We could find persons who resemble persons right here that we know that you might even mistake for somebody from Guyana. So
well, the minister from Ghana who was at the aviation conference,
okay,
he stated that when he landed here, he could have closed his eyes and opened them, and he thought he was still in Ghana. And most Guyanese of African descent, or heritage from Africa, is from Ghana. It's from West Africa. That's where Guyanese are from, African Guyanese.
Most Guyanese are from. Yes. Well, we were hoping some calls would come through. I don't know if everything is hooked up properly with our lines. I was seeing one blink, then I saw two, but no calls have come through as yet. But
the next time we'll have to test it before.
Yes, we should. We should test it to make sure that persons would be able to make calls.
So let us invite the general public to visit us every Thursday.
Yes, definitely. Yes, Brother Eric is asking that we extend an invitation to our viewers to join us at the Museum of African Heritage every Thursday at 5:30, except for national holidays. And the African Museum is in Berrima Avenue, Bel Air Park. That's the corner just before Duncan Street, where you have Survival Supermarket at the corner. Or it is the street where we had the old tobacco company. That's how most people, and Kentucky Fried Chicken at the corner most recently. So the public is welcome. We're there from 5:30 every Thursday afternoon. Feel free to join us. And those of you who want copies of the Guyana Reparations story, call us. Let us know if you can't come to pick up your book. We'll make an effort to get it to you. And
I'd like to close our program by extending our congratulations to
Dr. Eddie Grant. Yes.
Who is our international patron and who recently came and spoke to us and who always comes to speak with us.
Yes.
And I think when you have someone of Eddie Grant's long history of justice and fighting for reparations, whether it's in South Africa, apartheid, it is good. It's a good feeling because we know that we are on the right path and we are on a just path. So perhaps when you come visit us, he'll be there because he often comes when he's in Guyana.
Often with us. And seeing as we're talking about Dr. Eddie Grant, when we entered one of the studios in Essequibo while we were there was this big Bob Marley portrait on the wall. And Brother Eddie said, but you have Bob Marley here, but you don't have me. But one of our problems, and this is something we need to repair, because the only way we could have Bob Marley everywhere is because Jamaicans promoted him. So we need to promote our Eddie Grant. He's our own. We should be proud of him. Guyanese have a way, and I guess it's part of our colonization that we like to emanate. We try to be everybody. We try to pretend we're Jamaican, Trinidadian, American, everybody. We try to pretend, but
in
we're
the same
not.
way we try to pretend we're not black.
Yes, and we're not proud of ourselves. All of our DJs, our singers, everybody, they feel that if you don't put on a Jamaican twang, you won't be accepted. You should be proud of yourself. You're proud of yourself as an African Guyanese, and you promote your own style and your own culture, because that is one of the things that helped Brother Eddie Grant to become so great and so recognized internationally.
Well, it's interesting because with oil, we have so many different nationalities here, and I get the sense that people are feeling inferior and uncomfortable. You have to be proud of your own Guyanese-ness, your own Indian-ness, your own African-ness.
True.
And if you are, you wouldn't be fearful of other cultures. Of course, now that we have oil, you see that people want to have carnival here.
I know.
So everybody sees here, we're everybody's ATM machine now. But the only way we can balance that out is if we understand who we are and we promote our own culture.
True. And Brother Eric, I admire Brother Jonathan because you always insist that we use standard English when we presenting. But I admire Brother Jonathan because he drops the curlies and then he comes right back with the English for you. So I think we need to start being more proud of ourselves and being proud, even though we could adapt to other things, we need to be proud of ourselves. Yeah. And we have Dr. Eddie Grant, who is one very big example we could use of why you should be proud you're Guyanese, and don't be afraid. Being yourself and being proud of who you are will take you wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I have lots of fights with this Creolese versus English.
Yes.
I believe that when we're among ourselves, we should be speaking English.
Yes, we should.
Especially the University of Guyana where I teach.
Yes.
But, Creolese has its own power. For example, you take the English statement, once bitten, twice shy, and that has its own connotation, but in Guyanese culture, it's once bitten, twice bite out. and that's more powerful.
Yes, but I recognize too that, for instance, when we were in Essequibo again, we were talking, it was at the Etame
School.
Etame School, and it happened also at the Good Hope School, where when we talked to the children in standard English, and Brother Royston was talking to the children in standard English, and they were like, and he had to talk in Creolese to get them to understand.
It's a foreign language.
Yes, it was.
Well, we can't, this is part of us understanding who we are. We're multilingual.
True,
but there's a place and time for everything.
True.
And if we're going to be global entrepreneurs, we have to speak English.
Yes.
I mean, you go down to the market and you hear people say, that fish smells stink. But, the Englishman may say, Madam Fishmonger, my nasal organs inform me of the obnoxious aroma of that aquacious creature. You need to do both.
I know. Definitely we need to be multilingual because we have our neighbors. We need to know their languages too because they're pouring into Guyana. More nationalities will be here, so we definitely need to know many more languages. And I, for one, would say I didn't take my foreign language very seriously when I was in high school. But we need to have our youths focus more on those foreign languages and standard English most of all, because it has become the internationally accepted.
Yeah, part of our sovereign wealth fund, our natural resources fund, I'm hoping that much of it will be focused on the development of human capital. Because when you look at global trends, the countries with the highest human capital is very competitive. For example, Japan has the highest level of human capital. But we live in many different circles. In the community, we speak Creolese. In school, we should be speaking English. We need to learn Spanish or French or Portuguese and Chinese. So it's part of our school system has to adjust to that.
Yes, well,
but coming back to the topic of reparations, we need unity in Guyana, and something has to underpin it.
Sure.
And the only thing that can underpin it is a correct narrative of our history.
Yes.
What has happened politically is that we have these political entrepreneurs, these racial entrepreneurs, who try to misrepresent the fact.
Sure.
And to give the idea that they're superior to us, or other groups are superior to other groups. And with that type of poison in our society, it will only become more difficult to manage. We have elections coming up in 2020. A lot of people are focused on that. But what we should really be focused on is that the cup is half full. And we need to do things collectively to make sure others don't sell the cup whilst we're fighting over whether the cup is half empty or half full.
I prefer to use the term glass. My glass is half full and not half empty. Our technician just signaled to us that we should wrap up, so give us our closing.
Well, we'd like to thank the audience for being here with us tonight. We hope you get a copy of this book. It's 4 booklets within a book. The first is about In the Beginning. The second is about Africa before chattel slavery, the great civilizations. Tonight we spoke about the African Holocaust. What the United Nations said of the Durban Declaration, the barbarity of enslavement, how many of our people died. And so we hope that you've become more educated with this session, and we look forward to seeing you again. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, I must say that even though some persons might not have been able to capture much during our discussion in the program, you could check for us on the YouTube, where there is Reparations Now. And you Google us on YouTube, Reparations Now, you'll find copies of most of our programs, if not all. And don't forget, come visit us at the Museum of African Heritage every Thursday. We're there at 5:30 sharp. The public is welcome. And with this, I would love to say good night to you, our viewers. Thank you for being faithful and staying with us. And we will make sure that you will be able to call us on our next program, because we'll be discussing book 4. And I would love to say in closing that this program comes to you under the auspices of the Ministry of Presidency, Department of Social Cohesion. So until our next program, which will be on the 4th Sunday of December, we will go out by saying Reparations Now.